Hi, welcome to Nothing Venture, Not the Game. As always, I'm your host with the most, your GM Jared, and today, I'm joined by Rules Arbiter Steve. Say hi, Steve.
Yo.
And we will be talking about the Starfinder's second edition field test guide, and this test guide is about the Mystic. And the Mystic delves into kind of our first view on magic. Now, if you're coming from Starfinder first edition, we've never actually played Starfinder in length. So we are looking at this with like Pathfinder 2 eyes, but also understanding Starfinder because we did look it up from first edition. But not having played it, it's a little difficult for us to see the big changes. So with that being said, we're going to kind of jump into it, talk about the things we like, talk about the things we're seeing, and really what's going on with the Mystic and how the Mystic seems to be playing out. So Steve, why don't you take us into the Mystic and mystify us?
All right, so here, as you see, we have the Starfinder Fierld Test number 2. So obviously, number 1, we got the Soldier. That big burly guy with the two-handed gun. Now we're going to be taking a look at the Mystic. So first things first, there's a little bit of like a preamble here. And actually, fun enough is actually in reading this, they do mention that they anticipate that this is going to be much more of a ranged-focused game, just in general. Not even just for the Mystic, but in general, that they expect Starfinder to be more range-focused. Now, I'm hoping that the Solaris, whatever that solar class, that use the power of a star to wield a weapon. I'm hoping that they come back. But yeah, they kind of go in here and imply that they assume that every character is going to have some sort of ranged weapon on them in some degree. So it's just some interesting key that I found in the little description here. But let's take a look at the iconic, which is I don't know how to pronounce that. It's Chuck.
Yeah,
there's no vowels, so I don't know.
So the iconic is this one hasn't changed. The Solaris one is the new iconic, but this is an older iconic, and this is what's that ancestry? The insect ancestry.
Oh, is it the one with the multiple arms?
Yes, it has multiple arms, and it's an insect. It's from the hive. I again, we haven't really played Starfinder.
I think of them as Thrycreens, but that's a D&D property. So
it's not the Thrycreens.
It's not really Thrycreen.
Yeah, so they don't have vowels, I'm assuming, and that's the reason why we don't have vowels.
But yeah, that's funny. But yeah, it's a cool, the iconic picture. But now on to the Mystic.
Ooh.
So this is your support class, and I hate to say that it's the cleric class because it is and it isn't. It's similar to like if you mixed bard and a little bit of cleric and a little bit of a lot of other classes that are designed to support. So it's not supporting in any one way. So you could build it a lot of different ways, obviously. So we have a hit points is 8 plus your Constitution modifier. We have wisdom as our key stat. And we have your standard list of your proficiencies. Obviously, you're trained in fort and reflex saves. You're expert in will, as to be expected for a predominantly spellcasting class. We get trained in effectively 4 plus our intelligence modifier skills. It's 2 plus our intelligence modifier. You get 1 from the tradition from your connection, and you get 1 depending on if you're primal or divine spellcaster. So you do have a choice of primal or divine. At the moment, obviously, everyone's trained with simple weapons. Everyone's trained with unarmed weapons. Well, for the most part. Light armor. So we do get light armor, which is good. And then we have ours trained in our spell attack and DC and trained in our class DC. So there's nothing out of the ordinary here. And if you look at the bottom, we see we have our advancement. Obviously, they give us 5 levels like they gave us with the Soldier.
Yep.
I'm just going to skip right to it. I mean, this is like, I'm just going to skip right to it. Just the interesting things that I found about this class. So obviously here we talked about connection. So what do you get with the connection? So here you have 2 different types of connections. You have healing and rhythm. So this is kind of like how you focus your connection with your compatriots, because the idea of this is during your daily preparations, you basically make a connection with up to 10 people that you consider your ally, yourself included. And then that's going to give you benefits to operate some of your abilities through either your spells or through your abilities that you're going to get. Let's see here. That's the Mystic Bond. You spend 10 minutes and you form a bond with 10 other willing creatures. There you go. Where this comes into play, at least the first thing that comes into play, is this thing called the Vitality Network. You basically have access to this network of vital energy, and obviously vital meaning positive, if you're still operating in the old terminology. we're getting there. We're transitioning.
Slowly.
You have a pool of points. Now, it's a base of 6 points, 6 hit points, plus 4 per level. So you start off at first level with 10 hit points in this mystical, invisible field around you that you have access to. Think of it like the Force, if you want to think of it that way.
I thought of it as like, wow, like you get the Wi-Fi signal, like on your forehead. It's like how many bars you have. You have Bluetooth connection.
How many bars, man? How many bars?
You only get 10. That's it.
Yeah, you only get 10. And what this allows you to do is, obviously, we see this in transfer vitality action. And what this allows us to do is you can spend an action and transfer any. Now, this isn't our personal hit points. We can transfer any number of hit points up to the maximum number of the vitality network that we have access to another character that we have made a connection with. So one of those up to 10 people. So meaning that if you had already made your connection and then you came across people that you were trying to help, you wouldn't be able to use this directly on them until you spent that 10-minute activity. So this is really more for your party members and possibly any pets or minions that they may have that you'd be normally traveling with. But you can transfer any number of hit points to any person you have a connection with just one action. And it's someone you can see. So that's the range, is basically how long you can see them. So effectively, if you had unlimited sight range, this could be planetary, right? You could just heal. If you, for some reason, had ability to see someone across the world, you probably could do it across the world. Just saying.
Yeah. Additionally, just to be aware, it is 6 plus 4 per level. So every level you get an additional 4 hit points. To
Not
add.
10. You don't get
Not
10 every level.
Yeah.
You get 4. So as your first level, you get 10, and then it's 14, 18, and so on and so forth. The cool thing about this is this pool, I don't want to say it's like focus points because it's not, but it regenerates in combat, because obviously the innate, it says here, when you start at start of each turn in combat, when you regain actions, you generate your pool generates 4 hit points back up to its maximum, and that number goes up every time you're relevant skill. So whether it's your nature, if you're primal, or if it's religion, if you're divine caster, that skill level, because obviously that's going to be the one you're going to be pushing the most. As that goes up in proficiency, you generate more per turn on your vitality field, your vitality network. A lot of things, like people, I looked at this first, I'm like, oh, they just have like a kind of generic pool of healing. But a lot of abilities actually function off of this ability, which I think is really cool. So they really leaned into the idea of this vitality network and what they can do with it. And some of the feats actually cost you points, and some of the feats actually say, well, if you have a remaining pool, you get some benefits. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But obviously they are a spellcasting class. So they have spells. They are a spontaneous casting class. So they cast like sorcerers from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. They're going to have a repertoire of spells, and they eventually will have a heightened. They'll have signature spells. They'll have signature spells in there, but we will get to all that.
Now, Steve, you were saying earlier you felt the Mystic class was a half caster coming from 1st edition, and now it's more of like a full caster. As
far as what I can tell, so they may do something different for Starfinder, but if you look from things that were from 1st edition Pathfinder to 2nd edition Pathfinder, they got rid of the idea, for the most part, that certain classes, what I would call half casters, I'm going to big old quotation marks on this one. There are some classes like the Magus and the Mystic. I'll actually use the Mystic as an example. At max level, only got up to 6th level spells. They compensated by this with having a whole bunch of other abilities. They weren't just a casting class. They had casting spells, and they had a bunch of other stuff they could do. So they kind of bridged the gap on that by losing high level spells. So you're losing 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells from first edition by gaining some other benefits. So the Magus got it with all the ways they can manipulate their weapon, and they got the Arcana abilities, and the Mystics, same thing. They had a bunch of different, they had their connection, which granted them a slew of abilities as they leveled up. If you take a look at any of these classes in 2nd edition that they converted over from 1st to 2nd edition, they don't have that mechanic anymore. So a Magus still gets 9th level spells, and there's a whole thing of how they cast spells, but we're going to skip over that. The idea that they don't do the whole, you can only cast up to 6th level spells. If you can cast spells, you can cast all the way up to 9th. So they got rid of that concept. So my gut feeling on this is at 20th level, this class is going to be able to cast 9th level spells, or even possibly even 10th level spells. I'm not sure if they're going to give them 10th level spells, because they do get a lot of those other abilities.
This is just GM Jared overshooting rules, Arbiter Steve. It's spelled ranked now, not level.
Ranked.
Yeah, just it's a running gag. In the remaster edition, because of the OGL, they're getting rid. And they said like people were just kind of confused because you had levels, but then you had spell levels. So they just renamed spell levels to spell ranks, just to end the confusion. So I'm just mocking Steve now. Just because like in videos or in the podcast, if you ever listen, you'll hear Steve's like booming voice come in as the voice of God. He'll be like, listen, Jared got all this wrong. This is how you do it. So this is my time to shine. But I digress. So let's go back into the Mystic, Steve. So like we said, they only go to 5th level, and at 5th level, you can only, if you see the Mystic spells per day, they can only cast 3rd.
I answered my own question. If you look at the spell rank chart, which I just scrolled to on your screen, I completely forgot to look at this because I only looked at the spells that they could actually cast. Their chart, even though it doesn't go to 20th level, shows a 10th level slot. Yeah. So this implies that they can cast 10th level spells. It may cost them a feat, because I know sometimes there are certain classes that didn't get access to 10th level spells unless they took the feat, and then some classes like the Wizard had a single 10th level slot, and they can get another one by picking a feat. So they technically do have access to it. They are going to be able to hopefully cast all the way up to 10th and be more of a full caster.
You know, we were talking about spells, and like we said, Steve said, like, hey, it looks like their spell rank, they're going to be able to get to 10th level. So moving on, we're on page 6, looking at that Mystic spells per day. We're going to skip over the smaller stuff, like every 2 second levels, you get skill feats, and 3rd levels, and every 4 after you get your general feats. That's very common. That's common in Pathfinder 2nd edition, and clearly it's going to be common in Starfinder 2nd edition. If you look at the Soldier, has the same kind of leveling scheme as that. So we're just going to be hitting a lot of the bold features to talk about the major features of this class. And one of those major features is at 3rd level, you get mental bond. And basically, you get to make a bond with 2 creatures, and they have to be on the same planetary body and are both alive, or functional in case of undead. I'm assuming like you can be a vampire or something in this game. So they're saying it's
similar to the Book of the Dead came out. So a lot of those options could be able to be used in this game. So yeah, you can be undead. Yeah.
So some kind of undead or brain in a jar that has spider legs because it's sci-fi.
Be Krang.
You could be, Krang. Like think Krang. Like that's in my head. It's sci-fi, so you get Krang from Dimension X, and basically you are aware of them at all present time. You kind of can pinpoint where they are, and you also get this absolute bond mechanic. It's a single action, and what that does is you concentrate on your telepathy towards the bonded ally to invite them into like a an online chat, like you get aim, brain aim, right? That's kind of what I'm reading. It's like you get brain aim. And if the next time you cast a spell and one or more bonded allies would be affected, choose either that spell only affects one of them, or that spell can affect does not affect one of the bonded allies. So if you cast Fireball, you can, or not Fireball, Flaming Sphere or something, the non-OGL named magic ability, you can choose
Fireball
that.
is still Fireball, right?
Yeah, right. It'd still be Fireball. I don't know. We're still waiting for the remaster, but I'm assuming you could use the term Fireball. So you can choose that one of them won't be affected. So let's say it's the soldier, and the soldier is in combat. They are in the fray, and you're like, I'm going to cast this ability. You cast it, and you can choose that if they are part of your brain telepathy instant messenger, that they don't get hit with it. That's kind of how it works.
Or if it's like an area effect spell that's a beneficial spell and they're near enemies, you can choose it to only affect the bonded target.
Exactly.
Instead of affecting everyone around them. So like a heal, say for whatever reason you're casting a heal spell that's area of effect, like a 3-action heal, and they would be in it, but then you don't want to get the enemies in it, you can have it only just affect that target.
Mm-hmm.
So on the next page here, well, there's actually a second component to the absolute bond mechanic. If your next action that you choose to only affect your bonded ally, and it transfers or reduces hit points out of your vitality network. Now, there's certain abilities that cost you vitality network to use, and they give you some extra benefit, or let you use your vitality network out of normal use. Beside the one action we saw, it actually regains 4 of those lost hit points. And if you're Master, it regains 6, and if you were Legendary, it regains 8. So there's going to be some mechanics that let you use your Vitality Network, not just to heal people, but to get ulterior effects. And here's a way to generate more back through smart usage of your Vitality Network and Absolute Bond combined together. It doesn't make quite sense now because we haven't gotten to the abilities to actually use the Vitality Network, except for that one action, but like I said, we'll get there because it's a little bit further down in the document here. But obviously, since they're a spontaneous caster, they get signature spells. That just means that they can choose one spell at every level to automatically heighten to whatever spell. The way, if you're not sure what that means, unlike a wizard character where I would learn Magic Missile or whatever they're calling it now, but let's call it Magic Missile. Everyone knows Magic Missile.
Yeah.
I learned that one spell, and I can use it in any level I have a spell rank for. Excuse me. If I'm a sorcerer or a spontaneous caster, similar to the Mystic, if I know Magic Missile, I have to learn it at a specific level. So I have to learn first level Magic Missile. Now I can then level up all the way to level 20, and if I never learn Magic Missile again, it would still have a first level Magic Missile, no matter what slot I decided or rank to slot it into. They have to learn individual spells at individual levels. So if I wanted a higher level version of Magic Missile, I would have to learn a 3rd level version, a 5th level version, a 9th level version. Signature spells is a way around that. So you just pick a spell at one spell at every rank, and that doesn't have that requirement. You don't have to learn any multiple spells. You can put it in any slot, and it'll be affected just like a wizard.
So continuing on, we talked about how the Mystic you get to choose between the rhythm or healing, and that happens at level 1. You kind of choose that, and then as you level, you gain feats. And we talked about how we're going to like jump over those, but some of the feats that they get are pretty important. So at first level, you get a deity's domain. You have to be a divine spellcaster. So being divine means you chose the healer option, and then if you have a deity, you get to choose a initial domain from that deity. At first level, you get the martial discipline. You become proficient with your deity's favorite weapon. So that's very common from the cleric in Pathfinder 2nd edition. And then they have the natural bond. And this is if you're primal. So again, you chose that rhythm. And this one, you choose one of the following Xeno Druid orders, and you become trained in a list of skills associated with that order. So remember how we said that, like Steve was saying, how they had like a smaller skill section. This one gives you more skills based on the Xeno Druid order.
And if any of you
also,
know Pathfinder, these look very similar to the orders that the actual druid gets.
exactly, yeah. And also, you do get additional spells listed per level. So, if let's say you're looking at the animal order, you get animal lore, which is great. More lore is always fun. But then you also get the pest form spell at first. At second rank, you get animal form, and at fifth, you get moon frenzy.
Yeah, and these are added to your spell repertoire.
Yeah, you just automatically get them added to your repertoire of spells. Additionally, another feat that they get is the network spell, and I think like this one Steve was like talking to me about, and he was like, "Oh, this actually sounds pretty cool." And this one basically says if the next action you use is to cast a spell with an area, a range, or a target, the spell manifests from one of your bonded allies you can see within 20 feet. So a lot of spells like healing, like the spell healing, you have to spend more actions to have it do more. So like first, if I cast heal at level at one action, I have to I have to touch you, right? And then with more actions, I could do more. I can make it become like an area of effect. Network spells, if you're part of my Bluetooth connection, I can then that's what it is. That's the only way to look at this. If we're talking tech, I'm going to use tech so I understand what's going on here. Basically, if you're part of my friends and family connection, I can cast a spell from one of my allies within 20 feet of me instead of myself, which is crazy powerful, because if you combine that with the earlier ability that we talked about, where you could choose the absolute bond, where you could choose 2 players, you could start doing crazy effects on the field very quickly.
You can't.
Yes, you can.
I thought you could, but you can't because...
you lied to me.
Well, I was rereading this. The idea, I thought you could use both of these, but they both have the requirement if your next action is to cast a spell. These are both abilities that you can't double dip with them, sadly. I like I said, I thought when I quick read it, I'm like, oh, you can use that plus the absolute bond and do crazy stuff. You can't use them both at the same time. They balance it. They thought of my game breaking abilities. They already nerfed me.
This is why they have playtest and they nerf Steve. But I mean, it's also cool because then you could have from the soldier the magic, like again, we talked about magic missile. You could have the magic missile kind of manifest from the soldier.
Yeah, that's cool because the cool thing with this is, like, if anyone's ever played with in Pathfinder 2nd Edition with the familiar ability, if you're playing a witch or you're playing a spellcaster with a familiar, you do eventually get an ability to cast from your familiar's position. So this is basically that for your bonded allies. So you spend an action, and then if that 15-foot cone of damage that you want to throw at it, but you want to be anywhere near that front line, send your soldier up front. So long as he's within 20 feet, you spend an extra action and you throw that cone right in the front of the soldier, and then everyone in the front of the soldier is getting nuked.
Yeah. Which kind of sounds really cool, especially if you can there's just so many random things you could definitely do with that one feature, and they're just all crazy. Like in my head, they're just all insane crazy, because you have the soldier run up, and obviously I'm talking about Pathfinder 2nd Edition spells, but you have color spray, which has a distance, but then the soldier runs into the fray, and then they color spray from their body. There's just color spray coming out of their eyes, it's woo, woo, woo. And then it just and it's just ways to torment your DM. Basically at that point, but that's kind of the earlier stuff at first level, and then you get a lot more features, because again, this is made so that you can play these playtest characters at 5th level, or kind of create characters for 5th level if you're playing Starfinder. You want to test out the Starfinder 2nd Edition characters. So again, we're kind of just jumping around some of the cooler stuff.
I want to jump around to 2 of the reactions at 2nd level, just because it kind of goes into that concept of the vitality network and how it can be manipulated. So we have a reaction here called spot healing, and this, if people who play champions, this is going to look pretty similar. You have a bonded ally within 15 feet, and you have the required number of hit points available to your, oh, I'm sorry, a bonded ally within 50 feet takes damage. That's the trigger for this reaction. The requirement is you have to have the number of hit points in your bonded network, to your vitality network, to pay for this, because it's going to cost you vitality points. The idea is that you quickly expend vitality from your network to your bonded ally. They regain hit points equal to your level, but then the cost is your level plus 2. So if I'm at first level, well, let's say I'm at 5th level, because like Jared was saying, I would be able to give you 5 hit points worth of life in reaction to you taking damage. So instead of me making you resistant to damage like a champion would, I'm actually just buffering your life to then, so you can take a little bit of extra damage. But then I would pay 7 out of my vitality network as that cost. So it's an interesting way of like being able to like reactionary dump some healing on somebody. And vitality boost, you have to have more than 4 points in your vitality network, and a bonded ally fails a saving throw. I'm sorry, it's about to roll a saving throw. And you're allowed to basically give them a +1 status bonus to the triggering saving throw, and then you reduce your vitality network by 4. So this is one of those abilities where if hey, if someone's about to make a save and they're pretty low, you can help them bolster their saves, but it's going to cost you a little bit of your network. So this network is a constantly shifting pool of things. So it's not necessarily just healing. Some abilities are actually going to be able to cost you points to get some benefits, or in the case of spot healing, you get to do it as a reaction, but it costs you a little extra, and you can't dictate how much healing it is. It's based on your level versus if you use the action, you can spend any number you want. So. Yeah, I'm probably just only going to talk about one more of the
feats.
Yeah, one more of the feats, and it's called. I thought this was cool. Memory bank is cool, but cloud storage is hilarious.
Yeah, I think cloud storage is one of the better options.
So cloud storage is another way that you can use your vitality network, and effectively what it does is it converts your vitality network into a bag of holding. And depending on how many, and you can basically store stuff into this invisible aura around you that you can store stuff. And if you have at least 1 hit point in your vitality aura, so if you haven't drained it completely, other people, so you can go in there freely and pick stuff out all the time, all day long. But for some reason, if someone else has to reach into your vitality network, if you have at least 1 hit point, one of your compatriots can reach in and grab an item out of your vitality network, and it just costs you I think a point for every time that they do it. It reduces the number of your vitality network by the bulk of the item removed. So obviously, an extra dimension base is a capacity of 12 bulk. When you're expert or higher, it goes to 25. When you're master, it's 50, and your legendary is 75. So that's a pretty substantial amount of stuff that you can just have exuded in your invisible space around you that people could just go yoink. But it does, if someone else does it, it does cost you points for them to rip it out.
So basically, you have a Dropbox. You have
it's cloud storage. It's literally what it says.
Cloud storage. Yeah, I mean, I have to say this. I have to give credit where credit's due. I love Starfinder because it's futuristic, right? I think everyone can appreciate it, but it's also still magical. It really, Starfinder kind of touches on a lot of stuff that I loved from the 80s, where fantasy wasn't solidified, where it was like Tolkien-esque fantasy, where we see a lot of our fantasy now. But it reminds me of like Kroll, the movie. Yeah, where like it's fantasy, but also sci-fi can be a part of it. And,
I'm almost thinking of Numenera as well.
Yeah, Numenera, exactly. And I really appreciate that they've taken inspiration from the real world around us, because a lot of things have changed. Like just conceptually, our world has changed in terms of technology, and they've really taken that and embraced that change. So you have cloud storage, and we made the joke, you have a Dropbox, and your players can do it. But honestly, in the future, that's not too unfeasible, right? Like it could be feasible, right? Like we've all seen Star Trek, right? We've all seen Star Trek. We all want the hologram decks. We all want the teleport. We all want to go over to the computer and be like, Earl Grey tea, please, and then just like, and then you just have a cup of Earl Grey tea. So a replicator, that's the word I was looking for. So I really do have to appreciate this on the stuff I'm seeing from the Mystic, how they've interwoven both this science fiction and this fantasy into a well balanced, well thought out class. Balance, I don't know, right? Like we still have the playtest coming up.
Yeah, there's only one other class available, so yeah, we'll know what the balance is as things get released. The other thing about the Vitality Network that I want to just touch on is, obviously we said that it rejuvenates over time in combat. Also, if you're out of combat, you can choose to take the refocus action, and it completely fills the pool to whatever your maximum is.
And as we know, refocus takes about 10 minutes, and that's something we're coming from Pathfinder 2nd Edition. It's a 10-minute time period where you kind of like hang out. You're not doing anything stressful, so you're just jumping from hyperspace at that point. You know, you're going from point A to point B, and or someone's in playing in the sci-fi casino, and you're like, I'm just gonna refocus. So that's your refocus. That's your 10 minutes, and you get it back. So the point isn't to really hoard this vitality. Yes, you could play a very powerful healer the way it looks. Just the stuff they've given us, it looks like you could play a very powerful healer as a concept, but it also lends itself to being more, as the things we've touched on, where you have the reactions to the spot healing, or even allowing players to pull one bulk items out. But that could be that could be a gun, that could be a energy battery for your firearms. It could be a grenade, right? That all of a sudden when your players is like, whoop, grenade, right? Like
dynamite,
surprise.
yeah,
right. So that's does a lot of stuff that they touched on, where you're supposed to kind of play with that vitality network, and they really want you to play with that. And again, I think you could be the healer, but there's just so much more you could do instead of just being a healer.
Yeah, we haven't. So we're going to touch on now is the connections, the choices of connections that you get. Obviously, there's two here. Obviously, if any of you played Starfinder, there was a lot more connections. There's most likely going to be more connections. I still think they're going to limit it to divine and primal, but I think there may be more connections, obviously, at launch. But a couple of things you get is it tells you your spellcasting tradition. So obviously, healing is divine, rhythm is primal. You get a skill related to, so you get medicine for healing, and you get performance for your rhythm, and you get granted spells. You get a cantrip, and then you get a spell at every level, every rank of spell. You get a spell added to your repertoire that you get to use, as well as you get a connection spell. Now, connection spells are effectively focus spells. And you also get an ability here, the healing one, Harmony. Whenever you cast a healing spell on a bonded ally that restores them to maximum hit points, your Vitality Network regains the excess hit points that could have been restored up to your character's level. Temporary hit points don't trigger this. So that's kind of cool. So if you're over healing somebody, now this is maybe the idea of like you're heavily using your Vitality Network. Now you're a little bit more incentivized to keep people topped off versus bringing them back from the brink of death. So that's an interesting concept. The rhythm, you get summon instrument as your cantrip, and you get those three spells added to your repertoire of spells. You also get this Song of Spheres, and you get when a bonded ally. This is your Harmony ability. When your bonded ally or creature's hit points are restored using your transfer vitality, they get a +1 to attack rolls and damage rolls until the start of your next turn. And obviously it says if it targets multiple people, you have to pick one. So the idea is that that's almost like a bard ability. So that's why I think that this is like a mix between bard, druid, and cleric all mixed into one, and you can kind of cherry pick abilities that you want. You can focus more on the druid kind of supporty side, or the druid side with the feat that Jared talked about. You could pick rhythm and get a little bit that bard kind of buffing, or you can go healing and be really good at healing.
This makes me wonder, because like everything I'm reading, it makes me wonder if occult is going to be a part of Starfinder. And I think it has to be, because like they're kind of just using Pathfinder 2nd Edition as kind of a roadmap. So it makes me question as to why they went with primal, when there is such a bard-like influence with the rhythm, and they didn't go occult, right? Because in Pathfinder, bard is occult, But I do see their aspect as like they're talking about the Xeno Druid and
Yeah.
this aspect where you can kind of like touch. They talk about like rhythm as being you feel the rhythm of the universe and it affects you. So I'm intrigued as to like what their thought process was behind
They may have
Primal
something
as a
else lined up that's going to be a cult.
I think that's going to be the S class, the
solar class, the
Solarian.
one that with the lightsaber.
Yeah, I think that might be a cult. It seems very
Maybe.
occulty because it has a lot of like. I think it'll be like during when you're using the sun feature or the light feature, it'll be like arcane, and then when you're using the dark feature, it'll be occult. Because that was up like I actually did get to play that class when we did a one shot years ago, and they had a feature where you could. To me, again, it was a one shot. I played years ago. You shifted between like solar and lunar effects.
Yeah. There was like two forms you can shift through. The one thing about that though, as I just took a quick look at it, because I that was one of my favorite class when I first looked through the first edition Starfinder. That was kind of my favorite class because you get basically an energy sword. You got a laser sword.
Yeah, everyone wants laser swords.
Yeah, everyone wants laser swords. They didn't have spells. So
No.
I don't know if they're going to make them different in that way or kind of keep them in the same theme where they focus on either their powered up armor or their powered up weapon. So we'll at the time will tell. But there is a bunch of classes they could pick from. I think that I don't know if they're going to do all of them, but I think that there will be because I think they're trying to make this compatible. I just think that they really wanted to lean in more into the druid side and give them a dabbling of kind of like pseudo bard, and that the really occult class may be coming from another class that they're going to come out with.
So we're going to skip over the focus spells that you get for either choosing healing or rhythm, and we're going to jump down. They have some new spells, really cool new spells that me and Steve really like. So we both chose two spells that we wanted to talk about because we thought they were cool. And yeah, so the one I chose is a cantrip, and it's called Analyze Target. And basically, you have 30 feet, and you choose you target a creature, and it lasts for 1 minute. Its duration is 1 minute. And basically, you learn everything about this creature. You learn its fingerprints, its medical conditions, basic physiology information. And anyone you kind of explain this to, yourself or anyone else, they get a +1 bonus to impersonate the creature, which I think is really cool because you learn so much about them, like even their fingerprints. It gives you a bonus to impersonate. +1 to medical checks, again, because you know so much about them. And +1 to not recall knowledge about the creature, special abilities, or its unarmed attacks. And one of the cooler things about this is if the creature is an illusion or it's under some kind of illusionary magic, if the spell rank is the spell effects rank is lower than your analyzed target spell, you know it. You're like, oh, that's not real at all, or it's being affected by some kind of illusionary magic. So you know that off the bat. And I thought this was a really cool feature. I know a lot of players talk about like, hey, I don't know what to do as a caster with one action left. It's like, do I move? I'm in a good spot. What do I do? Do I shoot my gun? But I used map already. And this is another great single action cantrip. And I think one of the things lacking in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a lot of single action cantrips that you have lots of options to them. And this is something I really like seeing is a single action cantrip. I kind of hope they bring this over to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And
same with the one I picked.
Yeah, I really do hope they bring this over. And it says, you focus on a target gathering data displayed by magical holograms. You could easily just say arcane. Yeah, like you could just easily say like, oh, you find arcane writing appears in front of you and you're able to read off their information. I think this is a great cantrip, personally. Steve, yours?
So we're going to scroll down a bit. I also picked one as a cantrip, and I had to pick two. There was two I wanted to pick, but the one I'm going to pick is Reorient. And this is another one that I want ported over to Pathfinder second edition fast. It is obviously a cantrip. It is also a one action cantrip. You have to touch the target. But as we said before, there are ways that we can get around that. Targets one creature. Applying the combination of vital energy and acupressure, you fire up the target to help their body regain its footing. The target loses the off-guard condition. So the ones, if you don't know yet, off-guard and flat-footed are the same thing. It was just renamed to being off-guard. So if they have the off-guard condition, they lose the off-guard condition. Also, the target becomes immune to the off-guard condition until the start of the next turn, even if it will be circumstantially applied, meaning that they are in the middle of a flank or some other, or they're prone, or some other effect says that they circumstantially get flat-footed. You ignore it until the end of their until the start of that character's next turn, and then they become immune to the spell for 10 minutes. Meaning it's only once a battle per person. But making someone not flat-footed, no matter where it's coming from, that's amazing. And I want the spell very much in second edition.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of these spells are really cool, and they could easily be ported over to second edition. My next one, I don't know how you would port this over to second edition. I just love the name. And I love the concept behind this spell. So I'm going to choose it's a second rank, spell rank 2 or spell 2. I'm not sure how to say that properly.
You're right. It's a spell rank 2.
Yeah, it's spell rank 2. It's called Doom Scroll, and it's 2 actions. It's 60 feet, and it's a burst area burst 15 feet. You have to make a will save. And it's sustained up to 1 minute. So again, not going into deep rules, but sustain, you spend an action every turn to keep it active. You magically broadcast grim news onto nearby devices, screens, and other displays, including comm units on armor. Creatures in the area who see one or more displays must attempt a will save, and then the creature becomes fascinated if they just succeed. If they fail, they become fascinated and frightened. And then if they critically failed, they become frightened 3 and even doomed 1. So it's just so much worse because you get doomed 1. Frightened 3 is a really rough one too. Also.
Oh yeah.
But I just thought this was hysterical because like imagine like some guys in like a spacewalk and they have like the helmet on and they have the overlays and then you're just like, bad news for you.
You just hear the Imperial theme song, the Imperial March theme song, and you go, oh no, where's Darth Vader?
Yeah. And you just broadcast bad news to people. And I love that. I think that's hysterical. I think it's really flavorful and it's just fun. Obviously it has a lot of different traits attached to it, and one of them is visual. So the creature does have to be able to see a screen.
Or it's auditory, so it's either see or hear.
Yeah. So I think it's fun. I don't know. It piqued my interest. I heard Doom Scroll and I was like, yeah, this is the spell I want to like talk about. So Steve?
Fun enough, I picked one that it's kind of the antithesis of Doom Scroll, even though that I just picked it because I just had a hilarious image pop in my head when I read the spell. And it's also a ranked spell. It is a spell slot 1. It's Motivating Ringtone. And I'm like, I have to just know what the spell does because the name alone, like same thing with Doom Scroll for Jared. I'm like, Motivating Ringtone, I gotta know what that does. And it goes requirements. You have a common unit used as a locus, meaning a source of where your match is going to be pointed towards, and a target's contact information. So you got to have them in your friends list, or you got to have them in your address book to know to be able to communicate with them. You got to dial up your friends. You got to know what their number is. It's a 120-foot range and targets 1 comm unit, and its duration for a minute. So unlike Doom Scroll, you don't have to sustain to carry this. It just happens for a minute. And you cause the target's comm unit to play a cosmically composed personal theme song specific to its owner. The creature who owns the target immediately regains 1d10 plus 4 hit points when you cast a spell and gains a 5-foot plus 5-foot bonus to all speeds. This is something the Pathfinder second edition, at least the old Pathfinder second edition, had a bad job of doing, but this is to all of your speeds. And a +1 bonus to all your saving throws against fear for the duration, as long as the comm unit continues to playing the ringtone. So the first thing I thought of is when, you know, the mystic is, you know, in the back and they send a message to their soldier buddy who's in front just mowing down people, and the Doom E1M1 from Doom just starts playing in their earphones. And it's just, they start walking through people and destroying them.
Yeah, in my head, you just get the Halo, the OG Halo theme song. Yeah, and you're like, well, I'm hyped, so I'm time to do something crazy. That's a great one too, Steve. I think it's again super flavorful, and like I said, I feel like they really thought about the world in which you're playing in. People will have ringtones. We've all heard ringtones, and now it's like you just get a dope ringtone for your character. You get a theme song.
I love the fact that you have to know their contact information, so you got to pull up your address book. You know, C, no, D, no, E.
Call mom. No, not call the pizza. Call mom. That's what you're doing.
Calling boss.
Calling boss. No. I think this is amazing. So that's just
here's the thing that I'm gonna go on a slight I'm gonna go on a little tirade. I think that them separating out from the OGL and letting them have to name their own stuff lets them give the freedom to go, we're not constrained by, okay, well, everyone knows magic missile got magic missile. No, we want to have this fun. They can make the names, number one, more relevant to what they're doing, and second, they can have fun with it. And it seems that some of these things that they're doing, it's just letting them have fun with the naming and the rules with everything.
Yes, I have to agree with you, Steve. I really feel Pathfinder 2e kind of brought Paizo back into like their groove, right? Like, you know, because they were coasting on 3rd edition, and they've had that out for so long, and then Starfinder came out, which again followed their 3.75 or Pathfinder. You know, it's very similar. And now you have 2nd edition, which kind of re-energized. I feel really re-energizing them. And again, the OGL, terrible stuff that WotC tried to do, but force them to, like you said, come into their own and have this like emphasis on the world that they are creating, these worlds they are making for us to play in. So, you know, just next time you get a ringtone, just think of that like the mystic out there is just hyping you up.
If you want to take a look at the actual Fierld Test 2, we'll leave a link down somewhere below, or you can just go to Paizo's site and find it, click on there, but we'll give you a link down somewhere.
So let us know in the comments if you like the Mystic, what you like seeing. Some of the, maybe we've skipped over something that you thought was really cool or prevalent. Let us know in the comments down below. We do read those. I read them, and then I see that it's a rules question, and then I screenshot it, and then I send it over to Steve. And I'm like, rules over to Steve. What's going on here? And so if you notice, like, if you're ever in our chat and you notice there's a rules answer question, that's Steve 99% of the time. And if it's ever like, oh, I thought this was cool, and then like someone's responding like, oh, me too, that seemed really cool, and kind of have a more you know, that's me responding to you. So you might get me, you might get Steve, depending on the questions you ask. But we love responding to you guys out there. And again, if you could do us a solid, hype up the algorithm on YouTube, give us our own personal ringtone by hitting that like button.
Yes.
And subscribing to us and pushing us forward. We're almost at 1,000 followers, or subscribers, which is really awesome. You know, we are little guys and we're coming up, but we have fun doing it, and we hope you guys have fun listening to us out there. So as always, it is I, GM Jared, and Steve, Rules Arbiter Steve, and we are Nothing Venture, Nothing Game. We love rolling dice, giving advice with a little bit of that New York spice. Say goodbye.
Later.
I'm petting my puppy dog. Puppy dog.
Oh, that's staying in.